Hi, this is Eli Brooke with Productive Style, and today I'm so excited to share with you a hydrangea bouquet. I'm going to start off by drawing out the flowers. This one's going to be a little bit different because it's going to be using an ink outline. The pen I'm using here is a Staedtler pigment liner pen, and these are just great because you can, once they're dry, paint or use marker over top of them. I use these a lot in my bullet journal, and we'll cover them with Tombow dual brush markers. And once they're dry, they're steadfast. You don't have to worry about the color bleeding or leaking, and it'll just leave a nice outline on the page. So I'm going to start by drawing lots of the little flowers, just kind of in a cluster on the page. And these can be really loose. The hydrangea flower is actually made up of lots of little flowers, and those are kind of 4-petal flowers. So you can see, kind of just draw a little circle and then do 4 petals with a pointy end on each one. And then also adding in kind of that classic long stem here and one of the big leaves. The leaf has sort of a jagged edge, so you can kind of just do the outline of that, and we'll do a little bit of lines to indicate there, but we'll fill that in with color and give it some depth later on. The other materials I'm using here, I'm actually just using a 9x12 sheet of watercolor paper, and I'll link all of the supplies down below so you can check that out if you need any kind of watercolor drawing, painting supplies. If you click the link, those are affiliate links, so it really helps me keep this channel going. So the other piece of equipment that I'm using here is I'm going to be using a set of gansai paints, and these are watercolor paints that are just a little bit thicker. It's a form of watercolor used in Japan, and gansai is a little bit gummier. It uses a different type of base in the media to kind of create the tints. And so this set here that I'll have linked below it's a little bit of a pricey set, but they're really nice and they go a long way. So they come in individual tins. You can kind of swap in and out with your colors and rearrange them. And the set also comes with a full set of metallic paints, which I'll be doing some other projects with. If you want to go back a few videos, there's actually a metallic gold overlay behind one of just kind of like an ink drawn flower. And I'll link that video as well. But that video kind of shows how those metallic paints go on the paper, which is really nice. It just has a really nice clean sheen here. Anyway, I'm taking sort of a periwinkle color, and I'm going out from the outside edge of each of the flowers and kind of bringing it in. So I'll have a little bit more water, a little more diluted paint as I go toward the middle. And I'll fill that in with some water here in just a second. But that'll just give some gradient and shade to the leaves. What you want to go for here is you want to kind of go for a couple different shades within those leaves, kind of light to dark, purples, and then I'm going to do some yellow accents as well, just in the middle of these later on. But I'm just using a small round brush here. It's a set that I found off Amazon. They're pretty cheap to pick up, and I think I got these as a gift, but they're just really nice and easy to work with. Good beginner brushes. So you don't have to have super fancy equipment to be able to do paintings that are, reasonably nice. The palette here I'm using is, you can get a set of 3 of them for less than $10, and they're on Amazon as well, or you can find them in just about any art store. I have a lot of my palettes I've picked up from Hobby Lobby or Michael's over the years. Those are kind of the ones that are close to me here. So just kind of filling in each of those leaves with the water, like I mentioned before. That gives the leaf just a little more depth. It kind of blends it in and makes sure that there's water that's saturated over the entire part of the paper. This is going to take a few different stages. So after I get through this, we'll need to let it dry, and then I'll continue to fill things in. So give it just a minute here. And I'm going to start to actually, before it dries though, fill in a couple other shades of purples and yellows. So I've got, kind of just a nice medium yellow. I'm going to kind of dot in the middle and let that bleed out. A lot of the hydrangeas will have some yellow shades through the leaves, and it just makes it a little more interesting to look at versus just kind of having that flat color. So you want lots of variation with this. And over time, as this dries, we'll also be kind of filling in the background. This one, I've not been kind of following my golden rule of painting back to front, but I'll fill in some of that with some darker shades. I usually, do one of two things when I'm painting. I'll either paint from the furthest thing away from me forward, or if you want to do lighter shades in the foreground, sometimes I'll go from lightest color to darkest color. So while we're waiting on those leaves to dry, I'm just kind of washing in a nice green shade, and then I'll outline each of the little lines and indentions with a little bit darker paint. Kind of makes it a bit 3D as you look at the leaves there, so you can kind of see that working through, and just let the paint kind of flow where it wants to. All of those little interesting flows it has on the water is what makes your artwork unique and yours, right? So wherever you see that there might be like a shadow on a leaf, you can also add a little bit darker color and then just kind of outline there. And you can actually go over it with a little bit of water, and that water will help it blend and bleed out too. So if your paper gets too dry, you can always just take a clean brush and daub on some water. If your paper is too wet, you just give it a few minutes to dry. And if you make mistakes, it's okay, you can blot them. And I'm also using paper towels to blot to give a little bit of depth to the leaf. So I just love the kind of imagery you get when you will layer on the watercolor and then kind of dab it off. So you can see there's just, a lot more kind of three-dimensional quality to these leaves after doing that a few times. So really easy technique, and most people aren't really using paper towels to paint with, but I love doing that. It just makes it kind of fun. So filling in some of the darker areas here behind the flowers, so there's shadow back in there. So you want to do less water with your paint and just fill that in around the flowers. And these have had a chance to dry for a minute, so they won't bleed out with the purple. It's really important that you let those flowers dry. And it dries pretty quickly. And so up toward the top, I'm going to fill in with a different shade of purple, because if you think about it, back behind your first set of leaves, there's going to be rows and rows of little petals and blossoms, little petals and blossoms back in there. And you can kind of do a gradient between the green leaves at the bottom and those purple shades at the top. And you can see here, you can also kind of watch where the yellow is kind of bled into some of the leaves. And that's okay. That's kind of actually what a lot of hydrangeas look like, having that nice yellow shade. So I'm just filling in gaps and pretending I'm kind of painting leaves behind the leaves, trying not to overlap where I've got the lines, but just kind of filling in wherever the gaps are. And for this, I'm just using an even smaller little liner brush. There's a really great set of liner brushes I'll link as well. Those are so important to just have that fine line. And there's some really good sets online of just, that you can get that have just a few little bristles in there and are really easy to work with. So those are some of the most valuable painting tools, because if you think about it, if you want to do landscapes, you do kind of the little tree branches with them. If you're doing flower work like this, all the little branches and stems and detail work, you'll need that smaller brush. So as I fill that in, I'm getting ready to kind of fill in my stem as well. And for the stem, I just kind of paint a straight line, but I don't fill the entire thing in, and then I go back over it with water. And that's so I get a little bit of a gradient on that. As you're going up and down the stem, you can add some leaves, add some interest. Stems aren't usually perfectly straight. And if you get too much paint or you don't like the way it looks, you blot it off and you just keep applying layers. That's the wonderful thing about watercolor. It's so forgiving. If you mess up, get a paper towel, blot it off just very gently with the edge of the paper towel. Another trick I saw, I'll have to share with you soon. I haven't tried it out too much, but I saw online someone was using a little piece of one of those magic erasers, and they just picked up all of the watercolor of the paper. So I'm going to try that out, and if it works, I'll share some info on that. I'll see if I can find that video to link to it as well. But just keep adding on layers. You can blend in if you think a leaf isn't dark enough. You can add more pigment. If you think it needs more blending, you can actually just add water right on top of it. And you can always go in and outline. So like I've added leaves here with paint, but I didn't have the outline and I wanted them to match. So as soon as they were mostly dry, I took one of the pigment liner pens. You can see here my method of cleaning up spills. So I can hardly do a painting without some kind of splatter, but just a little bit of water on paper towel kind of wipes it off. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please take the time to like and subscribe. Really means a lot to have more subscribers, and that way you won't miss another Creative Tuesday video. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.